So it's my honor and pleasure to introduce the Gresham Visiting Professor of Film and Theater Music, Dominic Broomfield-McHugh, who is Professor of Music at the University of Sheffield. He is the winner of an Emmy Award and has published 10 books, most recently editing the Oxford Handbook of the Hollywood Musical. And he's given lectures and talks on stages from London to New York City to Sydney and beyond. We're delighted to welcome him to Gresham again tonight, and also to welcome the actor Beverly Cline, who has performed across the UK, Europe, and further afield in musicals, including most recently a starring role in Fiddler on the Roof at Regent's Park Open Air Theatre. And among many other roles, I'll just note that she was also part of the original London company for Les Miserables. So please welcome both of these eminent colleagues to present and perform in this seasonally fitting Gresham lecture, Unwrapping Irving Berlin's White Christmas.
Hello, everyone, and thank you so much for coming along on this wet and cold evening. So it's nearly Christmas, and therefore I thought we'd start with a quiz question. Here we go. What links the following musicians? Okay, there we go. ABBA, Beyoncé, Adele, The Smiths, The Beatles, Aerosmith, Ozzy Osbourne, Bruce Springsteen, Village People, Elton John, and the estate of Prince, the estate of Queen, and the estate of the King of the High Seas, Luciano Pavarotti. Well, you'll never guess, so I'll tell you. They've all objected to the use of their music by Donald Trump in his political campaigns. You thought it was going to be White Christmas, didn't you? Well, and since you asked, Celine Dion's heart will not go on for President-elect Trump. And my gift to you is the Wikipedia page on the subject where you can learn more. Now, there is a good reason, believe it or not, why I bring this up in this context. And it's this. The lecture is going to look at how, if we go back 70 years ago, rather a different scenario was in place. One of America's great songwriters, Irving Berlin, was so keen on the idea that the war veteran, General Dwight D. Eisenhower, should run as the candidate for the Republican president, that he wrote a song about it in a musical in 1950 before Eisenhower had even agreed to become a politician. And upon Eisenhower's successful entry into office in November 1952, Berlin then memorialized Eisenhower, if you like, or represented him using a Christmas song that he'd written in 1942 called White Christmas for the film Holiday Inn, which was released during during wartime and represented a kind of wartime spirit to the people. And so in 1952, he started working on a film called White Christmas, based on this song and inspired by this song. And in the opening scene of the film, what do we see but a general listening to Bing Crosby performing the song White Christmas. So there's this loop between the song appearing during the Second World War and then Berlin being inspired by Eisenhower to represent Eisenhower. In the film White Christmas, which we think of as a sort of Christmassy, festive thing, but actually has this strong and perhaps puzzling military vein running through it, which we're going to explore in part tonight. So how did this come about? Well, we start with Irving Berlin, who was a remarkable figure. He was born in 1888 and died in 1989. So he lived to be 101 years old. He was born in the age of Puccini, died in the age of Andrew Lloyd Webber, and lived through this remarkable series of historical and cultural transformations. But he was born in Imperial Russia. He went to America aged 5. He didn't speak or read a word of English when he went there, and he had no formal musical education. And yet, his fellow songwriter, Jerome Kern, once Berlin's career had taken off, famously said, "Irving Berlin has no place in American music. He is American music," which is quite a journey. So how did this come about? Well, partly it happened because Berlin was simply so prolific. He wrote over 1,200 published songs and several hundred that were never published. And so he had this amazing output. And almost every year he came up with another hit. Blue Skies, Putting on the Ritz, Easter Parade, Cheek to Cheek, Let's Face the Music and Dance. It went on and on. And so one of the reasons why he represented American music was simply that he was writing so much of it at such a high profile. He also affected and changed the geography of New York, of Broadway to some extent. He commissioned and had built and owned his own theatre called the Music Box, which still stands and which continues to be used today. And he even wrote a series of reviews or kind of variety shows for that theatre. He wrote the inaugural show called the Music Box Review of 1922, in which he himself appeared in a sort of spoofy autobiographical number in which he was interviewed by 8 chorus women known as the 8 Little Notes, representing the notes of the musical scale. By the mid-1930s, he had a kind of commercial clout, especially in Hollywood, that really no one could compete with. And we can see this when we look at the fees of the leading figures involved in creating the film Top Hat in 1935, which was the most successful of the Fred Astaire, Ginger Rogers series. They made 9 films together in the 1930s and another one in the 40s. So Fred Astaire on this film earned a flat fee of $40,000. Ginger Rogers, who was doing absolutely nothing at all, earned $7,172.50. I hear that she did get to keep her gowns, which were worth quite a lot of money, but they were not worth $40,000. Mark Sandridge, who was the director, earned $36,250, and Irving Berlin earned $75,000 for writing the 5 songs that appear in the film. And he wanted $100,000, but the studio said they couldn't afford it. So they pacified him by allowing him to keep the copyright and publication rights on the songs, which was an extraordinary commercial move by the studio, because in those days, actually, it was the sales of sheet music and all of the sort of sales, the money generated from playing songs on the radio that actually made the studios a significant percentage of their income. So for Berlin to get the gig, despite demanding that, was quite a big thing, in addition to earning more than Fred and Ginger combined. In 1939, he had the idea, first of all, in February, to create another variety show, another review, where each scene would commemorate or depict a different national holiday, a different important day of the year in America. And the second draft of it, which we can see here, which is from the Library of Congress, was called Happy Holidays. And you can see he's starting to lay out that it's going to cover New Year's, Inauguration Day, Mother's Day, Valentine's Day, Easter, Independence Day, and finally Thanksgiving and Christmas. And this is the birth of the song White Christmas. It's this idea that he's going to write a kind of calendar of songs that's going to be a stage musical. Over the weekend of the 6th and 7th of January 1940, he almost certainly, over those 2 days, wrote the song White Christmas. And the story goes that he walked into his office in New York on the Monday morning, the 8th, and the words were written down and the music was written down for the very first time. You can see in the top right-hand corner that it's dated January the 8th. He used a musical secretary, so this is not in his handwriting, but it is the first time it was written down. As 1940 went on, he started to develop this catalogue of songs about the different holidays, and White Christmas was first performed on the radio in December 1941 by Bing Crosby as part of his Christmas broadcast. So it was heard once, but the broadcast was not recorded for posterity, so that recording is lost. In April 1941, the stage musical became a film instead, so they decided it would make a great movie for Bing Crosby and Fred Astaire. The premiere of the film happened on the 4th of August 1942 in New York in aid of Navy relief. Berlin was very keen on putting on charitable events, and you can see there, that's the marquee before the opening screening. By the end of that week, if we look at the Billboard charts, we can see that one of the songs from Holiday Inn, this musical, had reached number 1 on the most played songs on the radio. However, it was not White Christmas. It was instead the song written for the Valentine's Day scene, Be Careful, It's My Heart. And there's no sign of White Christmas at all, which is not entirely surprising because it was August. However, the 6 of the songs had been released on the 30th of July, including White Christmas, as records. So you could buy White Christmas from the end of July if you felt so inclined. Now, it occurs to me that you might not know this song, Be Careful, It's My Heart, even though it was trending in the summer of 1942. So I thought it would be a good moment to welcome this evening's guest performer. You will know her from some of the many productions in which she's appeared over the last few decades. In fact, she's appeared most recently in the revivals of Cabaret and Fiddler on the Roof, but her remarkable career has included things like the National's landmark production of Candide, and she played Golda opposite Henry Goodman in another revival of Fiddler on the Roof. So it's a great honor and a privilege to be performing and working with her tonight. Please welcome Beverly Klein. So when we were chatting, you remember we were going to chat now?
I do remember. That was fake surprise.
You're worried about that C there, aren't you?
I am, yes.
We'll talk about that later.
Yeah.
So when we were first chatting on the phone, I expected you not to know this song either, and you went, oh yes, I know Holiday Inn. Is this something that you have watched a lot over the years, or is it something you grew up with?
Well, Dominic, you know I'm a very, very elderly person,
No.
and actually it occurs to me that this film actually came out only 12 years before I was born. Mm-hmm. So it was, even though it felt old to me when I watched it, but of course I saw it on TV, black and white film, but it was one of my favourites. And of course, since we've been talking about it, I was absolutely positive that it had been in colour, but I think I probably was conflating it with White Christmas, possibly, because I now realise that it was actually in black and white. But that was the way, wasn't it, that Saturday and Sunday afternoons, those Sundays where nothing was happening and everything was closed, we all watched films on the BBC. And I have to say, Holiday Inn was one of my favourites.
And is there a reason why it was one of your favourites?
Oh, that's a difficult question. I think it was because of this particular song. Be careful. Was that the right answer?
There we go.
We hadn't rehearsed that.
Oh, shall we give it a go then?
We shall. And actually, of course, I did watch this clip. And there's poor old Bing singing away, Be Careful, It's My Heart. And then his paramour, his lady love, gets whisked away by Fred Astaire to do the...
Yes, he plays a very mean character in this film, doesn't he? Fred. Yes, he plays a very mean character. He keeps coming on the scene and trying to steal Marjorie Reynolds away.
To steal her away.
And the song is a very strangely kind of unromantic song for Valentine's Day. It's about don't break my heart kind of thing.
It is true. It is.
Okay, here we go.
Unusual. Sweetheart of mine, I I've sent you a valentine, sweetheart of mine. It's more than a valentine. Be careful, it's my heart. It's not my watch you're holding, it's my heart. It's not the note I sent you, which you quickly burned. It's not the book I lent you, which you never returned. Remember, it's my heart, the heart with which I willingly bought. It's yours to take, to keep or break, but please, before you start, be careful. It's my heart. It's my heart. It's not my watch you're holding. It's my heart. It's not the note I sent you, which you quickly burned. It's not the book I lent you, which you never returned. Remember, it's my heart, the heart with which so willingly I part. It's yours to take, to keep or break, but please, before you start, be careful. It's my heart. And the wrong note.
Bravo.
Did you run through it this afternoon?
No. So, a month on from the billboard that we were looking before, a month on from the release of the film, Be Careful, It's My Heart has actually started to drop down the charts a little bit. And if we go on a further month to October the 2nd, so the film has now been out for 2 months, we can see that Be Careful, It's My Heart is now at number 6 in the radio plays, but suddenly White Christmas has appeared, both as the 13th most played thing on the radio in America, and Bing Crosby's record is now in the top 10 most purchased records in the country. It's at number 9. And if we look at sheet music sales, which in those days were significant, we can see that White Christmas has also started to appear and outdo Be Careful, It's My Heart. 2 weeks after that, Be Careful, It's My Heart is really on the way out, but White Christmas is on the 3rd spot in the most radio plugs and number 2 in the most bought records. It's also number 1 in the most purchased sheet music in the country. This is the middle of October. And then if we go ahead to the 22nd of October, then it's number 1 in the record charts and number 1 in the sheet music charts. So now this may not seem that remarkable, but consider they've not had Halloween yet, never mind Christmas. So it's not necessarily cognitively natural that this song would become sort of commercially successful and significant at this point in the year, because it's a long time since the film was released. And although it was successful, it was the 6th most successful film of the year. So 5 other films did better, and it's not really the Christmas season yet. So what's going on? Well, there's a famous newspaper article written by Carl Sandburg, who was a major poet and biographer of Abraham Lincoln and a major sort of commentator of the times, which he wrote in December. And he explains through this piece really why White Christmas, the song, was resonating this year, which is 1 year into the war as far as America is concerned. It's a year after Pearl Harbor. And he says, "We have learned to be a little sad and a little lonesome without being sickly about it. This feeling is caught in the song of 1,000 jukeboxes and the tune whistled in streets and homes, 'I'm dreaming of a white Christmas.' When we sing that, we don't hate anybody. And there are things we love that we're going to have sometime if the breaks are not too bad against us. Way down under this latest hit of his, Irving Berlin catches us where we love peace." So he's basically saying it's not about Christmas at all, which explains why it took off in October. And Berlin himself had noticed that this was happening as early as the beginning of November. He wrote a letter to Mark Sandrich, who was the director of Holiday Inn, and he reports that the previous week, in 1 week alone, they sold over 92,000 copies of the sheet music to White Christmas and 76,000 copies the week before that. And in one mailing that morning, they'd had a request for another 12,000 copies. And he describes something that was not his intention when he wrote it, but something that came to be true of its cultural reading at the time, which is that it has a quality, he says, that can be applied to the world situation as it exists today. I understand many copies are being sent to the boys overseas, and it's just possible, while it isn't a war song, it can easily be associated with it. Frankly, while we all felt this was a natural hit, I personally didn't believe it could be as much of a natural as the reaction to it shows. Later in the letter, he mentions another relevant project, which is called This Is the Army. So as if it weren't enough for Berlin to have written a successful movie that summer, he also saw the opening in July 1942 of a stage musical called This Is the Army, and he wrote this for the United States Army to produce and perform themselves. Berlin himself appeared in it, and it was designed to raise funds for the Army Emergency Relief Fund. And they ended up going all over the world with this piece. And so this was also taking off in tandem with Holiday Inn. And this takes us to the second reason why Irving Berlin is American music. It's because something that's true of a lot of his work is he was very keen to be seen to be a patriot. So, for example, he wrote the song God Bless America and gave all the royalties to the Boy and Girl Scouts of America. And he later said, "To me, God Bless America was not just a song, but an expression of my feeling towards the country which I owe, what I have and what I am." And then came, 4 years later, This Is the Army. It had made $3 million for the Emergency Relief Fund within the first year of opening. Here you can see 3 of the chorus boys enjoying themselves in the cars, because the cast was entirely made up of soldiers. And here's the front cover of the sheet music. You can see Uncle Sam presents This Is the Army. And I picked up this song a couple of weeks ago, not intending to do anything with it. But I realized that it did reveal something about why White Christmas, the song, resonated in the zeitgeist at this moment. And it's because if we look at the opening of the song, it says, "I'm getting tired so I can sleep. I want to sleep so I can dream. I want to dream so I can be with you." And this is a soldier writing to or thinking about his loved one back at home. And so if we think about I'm dreaming of a white Christmas and the idea of dreams transporting us to another place, this triangulates with what Sandburg was talking about and with the general reception of White Christmas at the time. It was during the run of This Is the Army here in London, actually in February 1944, that Berlin met General Eisenhower for the first time. He was Supreme Commander of the Allied Forces. And Eisenhower came backstage at Her Majesty's Theatre and made a speech to the cast of This Is the Army that had a very profound effect on Irving Berlin and made him feel viscerally that this was a great man. And Berlin mentioned it to Eisenhower 6 years later in a letter. He said, "I've never forgotten the first time I met you in London and that inspiring talk that you gave to the boys backstage. So this is the birth of Berlin feeling that Eisenhower is important. By the middle of 1944, this is the army had made almost $10 million, and it was due to make around $12 million by the end of the war. So this was a significant contribution to the war effort. And it was something that was recognized officially. Berlin was presented with the Roosevelt Medal for Distinguished Services in 1946. This was a major national award. And on the same night, the two army generals and the two admirals who basically ran the war from the American perspective were given the same medal. So for a songwriter to be the fifth person is a remarkable sign of Berlin's position culturally at this time. And of course, he interacted again with Eisenhower. Let's move on and think about what was happening in 1947 politically. So we have to understand that in the summer of 1947, Harry Truman was president of the United States, and he was a Democrat. And he'd become president when Roosevelt had died in office in 1945. He was looking ahead to the 1948 election and thinking, I'm not going to win, because his approval ratings were extremely low. And so he had an idea. He brought Eisenhower into his office, pretending to just have a meeting with him about the army, because Eisenhower was still in charge of the army at this point. And we can see from Truman's diaries, which have been made public, that he made a proposal to Eisenhower during this meeting. And he said that if Eisenhower should announce for the nomination for president on the Democratic ticket for 1948, I'd be glad to be in second place or vice president. I like the Senate anyway, he said. I could be elected, and my family and myself would be happy outside this great white jail known as the White House. And so this is remarkable that the incumbent president would say to a random, if very distinguished, military person who'd never had any kind of political career, why don't you run for president and I'll help you? Well, Eisenhower said no, which was going to become a theme of the next few years. But 2 months after that meeting, the Washington Post ran a poll that showed that if Eisenhower ran as a Republican opposite Truman in the 1948 election, he would win easily. And the analysis in this article shows that Eisenhower's greatest strength as a popular figure is his aloofness from partisan politics. In other words, he'd make a great president because he hated politics. Why am I telling you all this? Well, it's because it inspired Berlin to write a musical called Stars on My Shoulders about a retired general being persuaded to run for president. And the name of the retired general was General Waverly, which is the name of the character that eventually made it into White Christmas. Anyway, by January 1948, Berlin had sketched out this story for what this musical was going to be about. And it's full of these explicit signs that this was Eisenhower. So, for example, the people have made a choice and we can't go against the people. They want Waverly. Or the general is non-committal. Eisenhower was non-committal a lot in the press around all of this. And my favorite is that he sang at one point a song called I Don't Want to Be a President, I'd Rather Be a Grandfather. And interestingly, even this could be a direct reference to Eisenhower because his son, his only surviving son, had married in 1947, and he became a grandfather later in 1948, Eisenhower. So there's all of these signs that this musical is explicitly about Eisenhower. It was announced to the press in January and in February 1948, and in March 1948 it was announced that Rodgers and Hammerstein, no less, were going to produce this thing. And then suddenly, at the end of April, it was cancelled because the guy writing the script, Norman Krasner, wanted too big an investment in the show. And basically, Rodgers and Hammerstein and Berlin all said, there's no way we're going to do this, so that was the end of that. Irving Berlin, however, decided to stick with political themes, and at the end of 1949, he found another real-life political figure to write a musical about, and this one was going to be called Call Me Madam. And it was based on a fascinating woman called Pearl Mester, who had become American ambassador to Luxembourg in 1949 and held that post for 4 years. She was a famous Washington socialite. People actually didn't take her very seriously because she was famous for holding parties that would be kind of bipartisan in focus. So she would bring together all of these political figures, and then she suddenly became an ambassador to a European country, much to everyone's surprise. So Berlin suddenly announced that he was going to write a musical about her. And the article says, asked if Mrs. Meston knew of the planned production, Mr. Berlin shrugged and laughed, saying, "I don't know. She'll know about it soon, however," which is not a very kind thought. The whole thing, again, it was explicit that it was about real life, and it was very satirical and spoofy. So, for example, the epigraph of the published script of the show reads, "The play is laid in 2 mythical countries. One is called Lichtenberg, which is Liechtenstein plus Luxembourg, the other the United States of America." So we can see what's going on here. But of course, he couldn't resist coming back to Eisenhower. So in the second act of the show, he wrote a scene with the 2 book writers, Lindsay and Krause, where there's a discussion between Republicans and Democrats about who should run for president in the real-life 1952 American election. So we're on Broadway, it's autumn 1950, and the characters in this fictional thing are talking about who in real life should become president. And he wrote a song about it called "They Like Ike," who of course was Eisenhower. So since you might not know this, we thought we would demonstrate it to you if Miss Klein can bear to play all the Republicans and the Democrats all at once.
I am, yes. The professor has asked me to represent 2 Democrats and an entire chorus of Republicans in this. We're just going to do the first verse because it does go on for 5 verses, and I don't think you'll want that. I'm going to attempt to represent by raising my right hand, which is on your left, to be a Democrat, and to raise my left hand when I'm being the Republicans en masse. But I may find this is impossible, and I may drop it after the first few lines. So let's give it a go.
I would never be so brave. Okay.
The presidential year will soon be drawing near. The people soon will choose their favorite son. I wonder what they'll do in 1952. I wonder who they'll send to Washington. They like Ike, and Ike is good on a mic. They like Ike, but he says he don't wanna. That makes Ike the kind of fella they like. And what's more, they seem to think he's gonna, but Harry won't get out. They're in for plenty of fights. Harry won't get out. He's got squatters' rights, but there's Ike, and Ike is good on a mic. And they know the votes that he can carry, but don't forget there's Harry, but they like Ike.
So verse 2. So Call Me Madam opened on the 12th of October 1950 with this song in it. And 4 days later, the front page of the New York Times said, "Dewey backs Eisenhower to run for president in 1952. He himself definitely out." Dewey was Governor Dewey of New York, and he'd run against Truman in 1948. And to everyone's surprise, Truman had actually won. I mean, no one thought that he was going to win because the polls suggested otherwise. So for Dewey to come out and not only say he was not going to run this time, which he had been thinking of, but also Eisenhower should run when he was still not interested in being a politician, was kind of a remarkable headline. And you can see at the bottom there, it says, "No comment by educator." At this point in his career, Eisenhower was president of Columbia University, so he had completely stepped away from anything military. 6 days after that, Irving Berlin wrote directly to Eisenhower and sent him this letter. First of all, he said, "I was delighted to see you at our opening, so we know that he was there, and Berlin sent him a copy of the sheet music of this song, and he says, "You will note my inscription." Unfortunately, I don't know what the inscription says because the sheet music is lost. Anyway, the song is a very big hit in the show, and since the renewed front page election stuff, they applaud all through it. I needn't tell you how much I wanted this song to be a success. So Berlin is lobbying him privately and publicly to run for president. 2 months after that, Eisenhower is still really not interested in being president, but he takes a leave of absence from Columbia University to go and run NATO, which is kind of a political move. But as late as the end of October 1951, in his diaries, he says, "I do not want to be president of the United States, and I want no other political office or political connection of any kind." So this is the end of October 1951. Remarkably, then, in December 51, Truman, who is still the president, writes to him and basically suggests that he should run as a Republican in the 1952 election. He says, "Do what you think is best for the country. I must keep the isolationists out of the White House." So basically, it was now clear that Senator Taft was going to run as the likely Republican nominee, and he was an isolationist. He was anti-NATO. And of course, Eisenhower was in charge of NATO. So Truman's priority here was not the party. He was thinking, what's going to happen to the country? And so he writes this letter to Eisenhower and says, "Please run." In January 52, Berlin is approached about performing the Ike song at a rally for Eisenhower. And he actually performed at a rally at Madison Square Garden for him in early February. On the 16th of February, finally, Eisenhower announced he would run, and in March, he won the New Hampshire primary. In July, he won the nomination. During all of this, They Like Ike, which we've just heard, became I Like Ike, because Berlin rewrote it a bit to make it a kind of one of his campaign songs. And I Like Ike became his campaign slogan. And they even released a record where you could learn the lyrics and sing along with the song yourself. It says, "Play it often, sing it loud, pass the word, I like Ike." So Berlin gets very involved, and he even donated money to Eisenhower's campaign 3 times, having previously donated to the Truman campaign of 48 and before that to Roosevelt. So he switched from Democrat to Republican. He even got together with a gang of artists and people from the sports to try and openly campaign for Eisenhower. And Eisenhower wrote him several letters of thanks. Here's one from June 1952 saying, "I greatly appreciate the confidence you have expressed in me, and I'm naturally proud that you think me worthy of this high office." So he was now on board, and of course he was elected in 1952. And Berlin wrote him this telegram of congratulations in that November and said, "What a wonderful thing for our country to have you at this time." It was around this time that Berlin revived the idea of Stars on My Shoulders, sort of. And here we can see a copy of the complete score for White Christmas, which I took in the Library of Congress in May. It's a beautifully bound volume with all the music in it. And what Berlin decided to do was to, with the story, was to take bits of the story, including the retired general, from Stars on My Shoulders, and then mix in a bit of Holiday Inn as well, and it sort of became the film White Christmas. But to form the score, he took 3 songs that he'd written from Stars on My Shoulders that were explicitly about this Eisenhower-ish figure. One is called The Old Man, one is called Gee, I Wish I Was Back in the Army, and the third one, What Can You Do with a General When He Stops Being a General? He performed Gee, I Wish I Was Back in the Army at the White House in March 1954. So this is before White Christmas, the film, has been released, and Eisenhower said he liked it. Berlin also took a song that was cut from Call Me Madam, so it was performed in front of an audience a few times during previews, and they got rid of it, and it was called Free. And Berlin took this song and added new lyrics to it so that it became a song from White Christmas. And so we're going to demonstrate a little bit of this now. Not least a little bit, not least because the free version of it is really not that great. One of the things that Berlin was really good at was being self-critical. He would perform a new song in front of people, and if they didn't love it, he would throw it away. So this is the song Free, or the beginning of it.
Free
want on earth is to be free. Free to disagree with those who disagree with me. Free to close my door at night and never turn the key. Free to fall asleep at night and slumber peacefully.
So he recognized the words were not that great, but he thought that the music had potential. And so he took the sheet music and it became a song called Snow, which is very similar in sentiment now. So here's a bit of that.
Snow, it won't be long before we'll all be there with snow. Snow, I want to wash my hands, my face and hair with snow. Snow, I long to clear a path and lift a spade of snow. Oh, to see a great big man entirely made of snow. Where it's snowing all winter through, that's where I'll want to be. Snowball throwing, that's what I'll do. How I'm longing to ski. Snow, those glistening houses that seem to be built of snow. Oh, to see a mountain covered with a quilt of snow. What is Christmas with no snow? No white Christmas with no snow. Snow!
So there you go, that's how songs are made. In July 1954, Eisenhower awarded one of the two greatest honors of civilian life in America, the Congressional Gold Medal, to Berlin, and the signing happened in the Oval Office. You can see there they are shaking hands. And this was specifically for his services to songwriting, including God Bless America, which was the only song mentioned in the citation. 3 months after that, White Christmas opened, a film about the efforts of two entertainers to honor their now retired Army General. There are the entertainers, and there is the Army General representing Eisenhower. He even looks a bit like him. And the opening shot, as I said before, is of the General watching Bing Crosby perform White Christmas, which is why these two apparently disparate things are interwoven. It's because of this long backstory between Berlin and Eisenhower. And if you think I've been exaggerating the significance of Irving Berlin to Eisenhower, consider this. On his deathbed in March 1969, according to the Eisenhower Presidential Library website, probably his last ever letter was written to one Irving Berlin. And he said the following: I have cajoled my doctors into letting me dictate this letter. It's a brief but very sincere note of thanks to you for the wonderful melodies you've created over the years. I've wanted you to know what pleasure you've brought to me, not only during my recovery, but for so many years. No music has meant so much to me as yours. Now, you may have noticed that we haven't yet heard the song White Christmas in this lecture. And it's because I thought we would do it at the end. So to finish, I thought I would briefly return to that day in January 1940 where the song was written down for the first time. In the Library of Congress, we have this typed lyric sheet that I mentioned before, but I didn't mention that there is one thing about it that isn't familiar from what we know of the song, which is that the lyric for the second half of the refrain goes, I'm thinking of a white Christmas with every Christmas card I write, so we're not dreaming in this version. The other thing that was a bit tricky for Berlin was writing down music, because he was entirely self-taught, and so he had a slightly strange relationship with the piano. He had special pianos made because he only wanted to play in F-sharp major wherever possible, so that he could play mainly the black keys. And so he had special pianos made, one of which has just been given to my friends at the Great American Songbook Foundation in Indiana. You can now go and visit it and play it. And if you look on the right here, you can see that there's a little lever, and what the lever allowed him to do was to move the entire keyboard up or down to hit the hammers in different places. So he would be playing the same thing, but it would be heard in different keys by the person listening. And he would know which key he was playing in because there was a little sort of triangular thing there that told him he was playing in C major or whatever key he was playing in. Maybe next year we can have the piano shift over and I can show you. So he wasn't comfortable reading and writing music. He wrote a little bit and read a little bit, but wasn't very comfortable. So he relied on this guy, Helmi Kraiser, who was himself a sort of minor songwriter, to write everything down at his dictation. And so this first manuscript that we have of the song is actually in Kraiser's hand and not in Irving Berlin's hand. The only copy of it we have in Berlin's hand is from 1949, bizarrely. He seems to have copied it out so that there was a version in his handwriting. And when I looked at this, I was surprised to see that in two places you can make out quite distinctly that parts of the melody have been rewritten. And so I thought I would play for you how it might have sounded. Here we go. So you see, it doesn't quite sound like a hit song yet, and that's because some changes had to be made in order to make it work. And so this is significant because Berlin claimed that the whole thing was very easy to write and basically came to him almost as is. And he said, for example, 12 years later to a journalist, it was so easy comparatively to write, I didn't realize its potential. I wrote it in 2 rather brief sessions, and that's fast. Some take a lot more work. Kraiser himself also told Berlin's biographer that Berlin came in that Monday morning and said to him, I want you to take down a song I wrote over the weekend. Not only is it the best song I ever wrote, it's the best song anybody ever wrote. The problem with this is that he said it 45 years later, and therefore it's possible it wasn't entirely accurate. So in addition to writing down the melody, of course, Kraiser had to manage the much more difficult matter of listening to Berlin playing at the piano and write down all the other notes, all the harmonies and all the rest of it. And he did a pretty good job of it. This is kind of an almost exact version of the song, but there is an insert of 2 corrections to the refrain in his handwriting. So to get ultra nerdy at the end, I thought I'd show you the 2 changes that were made to the harmony in this song between Berlin writing it and then it being finalized. So first of all, we have this bit. May your days be merry and bright. So then the next chord originally was minor. So it went A minor 7, D minor 9, and it was changed to F major. But then it does that. So it was F major and then F minor on the word bright. And it occurs to me that the word bright is kind of a positive image. And so perhaps the minor version was not suitable. But it's interesting that he goes with a kind of positive major chord, and then there's a sigh. And it may be that this is the musical quality that made it land in this wartime, feeling, i.e. the fact that we've got hope, but also we're being realistic about how we actually feel. The other thing that was changed that's cuter than that is this line about listening to hear sleigh bells in the snow. Here we go. So the original version had some different bass notes, which we won't worry about. But what happens after the word snow originally went like this. But either Berlin or Crazer, presumably they together, decided to bring out this bell effect, which we can hear. Here's the bells. So there's a kind of perfecting of the whole thing as we go along. So there you go, that is White Christmas. And here to end the lecture, and we're going to perform it for you. So please welcome back Beverly Klein.
Which version are we doing?
All of them.
I'll hold my hand up like this. For the... The sun is shining, the grass is green, the orange and palm trees sway. There's never been such a day in Beverly Hills, LA. But it's December the 24th, and I am longing to be up north. I'm dreaming of a white Christmas, just like the ones I used to know, where the treetops glisten and children listen to hear sleigh bells in the snow. I'm dreaming of a white Christmas, with every Christmas card I write. May your days be merry and bright, and may all your Christmases be white. A white Christmas, just like the ones I used to know, where the treetops glisten and children listen to hear sleigh bells in the snow. I'm dreaming of a white Christmas, with every Christmas card